Kyle,
Dave,
how's it going, buddy?
it's going, man. This is episode 4 of the Lambeau Lounge, and we
The
are about to.
Favre, if you will.
That's true. Is it Parkinson's Favre or is it non-Parkinson's
The
Favre?
Favre
Is the
comes
question.
first. Like the Parkinson's is many, many seasons down the road, Kyle.
Yeah, that's it seems to be a. I mean, at least he didn't contract CTE. At least it's. I don't know if Parkinson's is
I mean,
better.
I feel like the CT is coming. That's just it has to be like post mortem that you find that one out. But I mean, it's a little bit it's a little dark, a little bit Junior Seau of you. But
Hey, man, I'm trying to give the man credit. Trying to find some areas in which I can give him some props, but
turns out half of those deep balls he wasn't actually throwing. He was just shaking so hard, just totally
just
yeeted them out.
only elite because of early onset Parkinson's.
That's all it took.
Good
But
lord!
all right,
All right,
buddy.
let's hop into this because we got a lot to cover today. First of all, since this is kind of our theme, and I really enjoy recapping some of these games, Packers Texans. It's a game that we were supposed to go to, unable to.
That would work.
But turns out being probably the best game of football played between two teams thus far. I know like the Vikings game was close, obviously, but it wasn't close in the first half. Not as fun to watch. This one was kind of a back and forth, and then there's 5 lead changes, maybe 6 with the final field goal. So I think this is the best competitive football game that the Packers have had all season. A lot of people were expecting that going in with the Texans being as hot as they are this year. So let's dive right into that game. Um, Obviously, we both watched it. Let's talk pregame a little bit, Dave. I'd just like to get your take on this. It doesn't have to be long, but so you saw all the stuff with Jair Alexander and Stephon Diggs coming in. They have some prior history, kind of going at each other's throats from Buffalo, and the Packers played them there. Seems like there's more than a rivalry there between them. It seems like Jair seemed to take that personally before the game, and there seemed to be some scuffles. The teams were at it. At least like I think the whole Packers sideline cleared to go talk some to speak some sweet nothings into Stefan's ears before the game started. What do you think about all the pregame stuff? And then we know Jair did a lot of talking and stuff during the game, but what's your take on it? How do you feel about it? Do you look at it and you just say, hey, that's a guy trying to be competitive, or are you thinking, hey, that's just a little bit too much?
Plot twist: they love each other, and it was just a bitter, bitter lover scowl beforehand.
Sure, a lover's quarrel, if you will, a real Romeo and Juliet type situation.
It just they couldn't decide where to live, whether it was in Buffalo, Houston, Green Bay, Minnesota.
Stefan just came up to him and he said, Green Bay's far too cold, Jair. We can't live here.
And Jair's like, "What do you mean?
He's like, we
Look
talked
at all
about
this!
Houston.
Look at these fans!"
We talked about Houston when I was in Buffalo, Jair. This was clear.
Then Keyshawn Nixon just ran up and he's just like, "He's with me now." What do
Yeah,
you mean?
Keyshawn's a side chick, I think, in this situation.
They just went at it. But I mean, it's guys never liked each other. That's cool. I think that I'm all about it. I don't think that amount of drama was necessary. I love Stephon Diggs' post comments about it, where he's just like, "I don't care if it's 1 or a million," acting like it's a real fight. Like, come on, man, it's not a real fight. You're in pads, you're wearing helmets, and you're surrounded by a bunch of people who are about to break it up. Like, best case scenario, you get like a shot in the stomach or like a rib. Like, come on, man. It's a little bit too goofy to take it that serious. I love the fighting about it, but then commenting about it afterwards of, "Oh, I don't care. It's me against everybody." It's not a real fight. It's not a real environment. You're just doing too much. It's the safest way to fight. It's almost like sparring times 2. If you're in the ring, you know there's not going to be any real knockout shots. You're not trying to hurt the other guy. You're just trying to, talk, show your skill a little bit. It's just there's nothing that bragging about it will do positive. I'm all for it. Believe me, talk your smack, do your little pull me offs and everything. I love it. That's great entertainment for me. Just don't talk about it after the fact. Say that it's you against everybody. I'll never take the high road, blah, blah, blah. Like, maybe I'm being biased here, but I definitely, when I saw those comments by Stephon Diggs, I'm just like, come on, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I like Jair as a player, obviously. I think he's one of the best corners in the game. People were putting him in the conversation a lot after that game because of what happened before it. You saw Jair kind of go into that game with a chip on his shoulder. I love that he does that. We've seen him do that a bunch of times when he's going up against top receivers. And sometimes it works out really well for him, and sometimes it doesn't. In the past, we haven't had the Halfley style defense, so I feel like there's been some different coverage schemes and stuff that the Packers have done that have allowed their number one receivers, whoever the team that we're playing is that week, to get free.
Mm,
But certainly there seems to be some adjustments in coverages, and they've given the leash to Jair to be able to perform under those type of circumstances. And I think the Packers coverage did a great job in this specific game. We know that, from watching the game, Stephon Diggs had under 25 yards receiving. So
mm,
really, I'm not trying to get, go too crazy deep here, but the best talkers in the game, in their respective sports, they don't just talk, they back it up. And
mm.
so I feel like this is an instance where Jair was talking a lot before this game and during the game, but also the Packers play was backing that up. If you know that one of your guys is running his mouth, the best way for that to come to fruition in terms of whatever is being said on the football field is performance. And in this particular game, when a quarterback for the Houston Texans, who's a very, very elite quarterback at a very young age in the NFL, throws for under 100 yards passing, and you have his top number one wide receiver, arguably, right? Like we know Tank Dell is good. And they have some other options at tight end that are really good. Dalton Schultz is a good tight end. But
Don't forget Nico Collins, though. Nico Collins is their number one wide receiver. I'd argue Stephon Diggs is your number two. But even with your number one out, you would still have enough options in that offense to be able to get more than 100 yards.
right. So I'm yeah. Obviously, Nico was hurt, and that was a big loss for the Texans. Maybe that game's a little bit different if he's playing, because you have two things to pay attention to. Really, well, three really viable receiver threats. Lining up at all times. You have Nico, and then you'd have Stephon, and you'd have Tank Dell. But I think the Packers, like I said, just kind of coming full circle. Talked a lot of smack, but backed it up. I think maybe one pass was caught on Jair as far as Stephon went that whole game, and everything else seemed to be covered fairly well. So I think they did a good job. All right, this is kind of off topic, but relates to the game. Just give me your brief take, Dave, on the Packers unis, the whiteout uniforms. How do you feel about them? You like them? You hate them? Where you at?
Indifferent. I really don't care either way. They're all right. I mean, they're cool. I don't think that Green Bay really does much for them. It's kind of like, you know how like the Bengals also do the whiteout and they have the cool
Yeah,
white tiger look to it? Like, I don't think Green Bay really offers anything like that in particular. You kind of have the G. I feel like they could have. I've seen guys where they were talking about like throwing yellow stripes on the helmet. That might have been something that could have added to it. I personally like my favorite is the bright green and the yellow numbers. So, I mean, everybody's got their favorites. I don't hate it. I didn't love it. I thought it was unique that they did that, and I think that's cool. Like, I like the fact that they spiced it up. I just don't particularly like that one. Wouldn't be one that I would buy. You know.
yeah. I really like them. As just my take. I'm not necessarily trying to disagree with what you're saying. I agree. I
No,
think
it's fun.
they're classic. They're classic home uniforms. The green on yellow is my favorite uniform still that the Packers play in. Um, but I thought this was kind of a cool opportunity for the Packers to be almost like a Boise State type situation where because it's because we live in a cold weather state, because we're going to play games inevitably in the wintertime that are going to be at Lambeau Field where it's most likely going to be snowing. It could be an advantage for the Packers to be in those hard to see, easy to blend in type situation. I thought that that could be kind of an opportunity to get on the field and give the Packers a little bit of advantage. I mean, you take it where you can get it in the NFL. So if the uniforms are something that's going to be helping the Packers win games. I'm all for it.
I guess
And
my
this one,
argument then is, why do you do midday? It's 12 o'clock game, and it's against a team that like you don't really have any history against, and it's early enough in the year that like we're not getting snow yet. Like I'd understand if it was like you give me a December night game with that, and you got some snow falling. Mwah, chef kiss. But like even the timing of it, I just feel like it wasn't thought out completely then.
I think it's an easy way to roll it out. I think that before the season starts, you circle this one on your calendar because the Texans had a hot end of the season. The Packers are a good young team. I think they might still be, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, the two youngest teams in the NFL. Actually, I think the Rams were the second youngest now, so I don't know if the Texans still fit that. But they're definitely up there as far as the youngest teams in the NFL go.
They're one
As
of the
far,
youngest, yeah.
but nonetheless, I think it's a good time to roll it out. You have that uniform previewing before the season. Everybody circles the game on the calendar for that. Specific reason is just the two teams are going to go at each other. They knew it was going to be a good game. Good time to roll out the uniforms. But yeah, I'm with you. I think that the cold weather environment would have been a little bit cooler if they would have rolled it out in the winter. But nonetheless, I'm a fan of the uniforms, and I will disagree. I will say that I would definitely buy a jersey of the all whites. Just or even maybe like a display helmet or something like that would be kind of cool to display somewhere in the basement here. But
Breaking news.
yeah, I will have a display.
Controversial. This is the statement that might be controversial if you're not a fan of the Packers. I feel like most Packer fans feel this way. Why wasn't this game at night? Why wasn't this the Sunday night game? You have
Yeah,
flex available.
yeah, it should have. Yeah, this game should have been flexed, I think. But given that it's at noon at Lambeau Field, I think that you have enough viewers on that game, to really draw attention to it. Like I said, I think this is one that everybody circled on their calendars kind of collectively, and it ended up being a great game. So let's kind of get into Jordan Love's performance in this game. He's going to be a big focus when people look back at this game and say, well, some of his throws still. We've been talking about it for weeks now, and I think we're dead on the money. All I can think when I see these interceptions sometimes is hero ball. And the first interception of the game didn't fall quite into that hero ball category for me. I think that he just made a bad read, and that turned into the Texans being on, I think, our 12-yard line or something like that, with with a lot of time left on the clock in the first quarter. So that one I didn't love. I just thought, no pun intended, obviously. I didn't love that one. I thought it was just a bad throw. I would like to see him throw the ball away there, just get it out somewhere where it's safe. And, I'm okay with a 3-and-out and we flip the field. This is a game that I think that you need to do that. But unfortunately, that first interception wasn't great. And then we have another interception down the line where we're just kind of playing hero ball over the middle of the field. Didn't love that one. And I think that absolutely falls into that hero ball category of football where we're just kind of taking a shot and hoping that it all works out, hoping that your guy's good enough to come down with it. It's a tough thing in the NFL, man. I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and it's the honest to God truth is that, I can never play quarterback in the NFL. We're not on this show or this podcast to critique and say I could do it better. That's not what we're here for. I admire Jordan Love's talent. I think a lot of people watch the games that are not Packer fans and they think to themselves, well, I'm not sold on this kid. And that's understandable. Like, I think that even up to last year until the Cowboys game, I was kind of like, hey man, this could be a fluke, right? Like this could be something that, we're just having a good bounce back. We haven't played the teams that would really put us under in terms of making the playoffs. But that Dallas game really sold me last year. I thought that, man, this kid has a great arm. He's feeling the field. He seems to be putting the ball exactly where it needs to be. And we still see that in the games in like crunch time. In this game, we're in, the 2-minute drill, trying to go down the field and win the game. He makes a lot of good throws and he trusts his guys. And I like that. What I don't like is that it seems like we make a first or second read and then we're just taking a shot on wherever we see a guy down the field with a little bit of space. And unfortunately, that's turning into a couple turnovers per game for the Packers right now. And, you know, I can't hate too much because we end up winning this game on a game-winning drive, and we put ourselves in a position to still be in it, to still win it, and we did. So, um, you know, I guess my question isn't so much is Jordan Love playing some hero ball at this point. It's are we okay as Packer fans and just being fans of the game, accepting that? Let me rephrase. Actually, is this something that we can expect from Jordan Love on a on a weekly basis?
I would argue that maybe starting season 2 Jordan Love, yes. Maybe that's what we get this year. Maybe, you give me year 6 Jordan Love in the system. Maybe he's a little bit smarter. Maybe he doesn't rely on throwing off of his back foot as much. I don't think this is the permanent Jordan Love that we'll see. He'll evolve, obviously, in the game, just like most quarterbacks do. I just feel like for this year, that's kind of who he is. And he's so talented at throwing the ball. He really can get the ball anywhere. Maybe not quite as accurate as we've seen in Green Bay, but when you just had the most accurate quarterback in NFL history on your team, yeah, you're not going to have that exactly. And the thing is he's going to put the ball up in spots that, say other guys wouldn't. We had a quarterback that didn't throw in the middle for the last 3 years that he was in Green Bay. Jordan's throwing it. He's slinging it. I'm okay with it. Let him do his thing. I think that once it comes playoff time, when you're doing it cross body, across the field, and you're getting picked off by the 49ers, yeah, don't do that. Maybe be a little bit smarter. Maybe just run for the first down, or just go take the 2-yard loss and then get that second down play. I think that right now he's learning, slinging it out. As long as he can mature enough throughout the season that once it actually becomes critical, yeah, no, then tune it in a little bit, Jordan. Maybe you don't get the big play. I'm okay with that. I want to win Super Bowls.
Yeah, it seems like we're forcing things down the field too much when we don't need to. You know, I know he wants to make big plays. He's got the players where he feels like he can make those plays, and that his guys, like I said, he's trusting his guys down the field to be able to come up with the ball. Do you feel like, Dave, that there's like some aspect of false confidence in this situation where, like the Rams game, right? We bomb a pass, 50 yards down the field to Jaden Reed, and it just so happens that it's in a triple coverage. He admits, Jordan Love does after the game, that was a bad read. I shouldn't have thrown that. Again, no pun intended. But makes a bad read on that play, throws it down the field in the triple coverage, and somehow his guy comes up with it. It works out for the Packers. Do you think that there's some sense of false confidence because of plays like that where, hey, we're just tossing the ball up and we're giving our guy a shot?
Isn't that something you want, though? Honestly, like me as and we have played football before. I want the guy who's going to go out there. I want him to walk up, put his what on the table, and say, "This is my field. This is you can't even compete with me. Yeah, I'm going to throw that up. Yeah, I'm going to put
His
it out there because I'm Jordan freaking Love." Like that's not getting confused here. We're still playing a very, very fun, violent sport. Yeah, go out there, ball out.
Were you saying his credentials on the table, Dave? Is that
Yes,
what you meant?
actually, his credentials. No, it was actually his driver's and registration.
That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was just trying to understand what the underlying
Please
point there
give
was.
me your driver's license and registrations, please.
Not the Tyreek Hill version though. We don't want that.
No, of course not. Honestly, that would be pretty funny.
All right. So that's all we'll say about Jordan Love. Like we'll see as the season goes on. Like, I think the beginning of last year, we were kind of in the same boat where we were like, hey, like, don't love the play, making a lot of mistakes, and they're young quarterback mistakes, so we can be okay with that. This is year 2, Jordan Love, and maybe you're absolutely right. Maybe that's just what we get for a little bit. And they tighten up the reins and they say, hey, listen, we can't force the ball in there. That's got to be a conversation that they're having to some extent, in practice or on the sidelines. But we'll trust the coaching staff. I think Matt LaFleur, like we've talked about, is a great offensive mind. And he's able to kind of, draw up some stuff that is very easy to get guys open, very easy to let your guys go to work, throw it out in the flat, a lot of motion. A lot of stuff that gives guys a chance to just get the 4 or 5 yards that you need on a down to be comfortable. So I think this is something that we'll continue to see evolve, like you're saying. As
I,
far as
I
Jordan,
agree with you completely, honestly. And I would add too, I think it's honestly Matt LaFleur's job to rein him in more. Because if I'm looking at Jordan Love straight up, I want him to have that confidence. I want him to go out and I want him to make those throws. But then that's where LaFleur needs to come in and, hey Jordan, we're not playing hero ball here. We do have a lead, or we're very, very close in the game. We don't have to throw everything up. That's where that balance needs to balance out a little bit more, I think. And I think you're going to get a better team in the long run. Give me that just pure confidence and a guy who feels amazing going out there. I can make any play on that field. And then you give me a coach that's like, you can, but let's not throw it into triple coverage.
let's not forget who Jordan Love is either, right? Like this is a player who,
Threw it
although
on the table.
he's a second year player, right? Like in terms of playing time, um, but he's not just a second year quarterback, right? He sat on the sidelines behind Rodgers, and I think even at this stage in his career, he's much more coachable than Aaron Rodgers ever would have been. Aaron Rodgers tends to be more of a, hey, this is what I want, and if we don't do it, I'm going to throw a fit kind of guy. Jordan seems like a, hey, like I want to go out and win games. I'm about the franchise and what the team needs. He's taken responsibility when he's made mistakes. He hasn't blamed it on others. So I think this is a positive thing. I think it's something that can be corrected over time. It's just going to take, it might take half the season for us to feel comfortable that he's not going to force that ball down. It might be that, hey, we're going to have to play in some big time games with some higher stakes for us to make better decisions. And that's okay with me. I don't know exactly what my expectations are for this season yet. I'm still kind of on the fence. I think the Packers are playing very well. Do they have a chance to make the playoffs? Yes, absolutely. We talked about how competitive the NFC North is this year. So I think that's going to be a big obstacle to overcome for the Packers is can we beat, a Bears team if they're very hot at the end of the year? Can we beat, a Vikings team that, although they've lost 2 in a row now, is still going to be a competitive team regardless. Can we beat a Lions team that likely is going to win the division this year? So, like, I think that those questions are still there. And will we see one of those guys in the playoffs? It's highly likely that we will. So, it's all about how his play kind of evolves as we get into some more serious games. Um, so not just that our deficiencies are Jordan Love. So we have some other concerns, and when I say we, I just mean I think more of the community at this point is kind of looking at that last game. They say, well, yes, of course, like our defensive schemes were effective in terms of passing, which is ultimately what won that game. We didn't allow them to go down the field. We didn't allow them to make big plays on the offensive side of the ball, except for Joe Mixon, who goes off for 115 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game. Well, it's not like necessarily a career day. I think it's a season day for Joe Mixon, which then begs the question, okay, well, are we lacking on the defensive side of the ball in terms of stopping the run? And do we need help on the defensive line? Now, you're a guy who studies the draft much more intricately than I do, knows players much better than I do, knows the pieces of this team in and out. And, I think that question is valid, in my opinion, is do we need help on the defensive line? Can you give your opinion on are we in need of assistance right now for this? Or is this something that we can build with time? Like, do you think that we can sustain some kind of playoff run with the defensive line we have right now?
No, we don't need to trade for anybody. That's it's no. We have Wyatt sitting in the wings. He's just been injured for the last 3 weeks, Kyle. He was before his injury. He was playing some of the best football of his career. He was run blocking. He was getting sacks. I feel like you throw another body in that rotation, I feel like you're doing a lot better. We still have Carl Brooks is playing decent. Kenny Clark has been playing better as the season has progressed. TJ Slayton, not the best ball. Not the best ball in the world. For being 330 plus pounds, he's getting moved off the ball too easy. Not my cup of tea right now. Although I love me some Tandrell Slayton. But this year, he's just kind of underperforming, and it's in a contract year, which is sad. You give me Devontae Wyatt, throw him out there. I think that our defensive line gets better. But I don't think that this game particularly reflects on our defensive line as much as the fact of you have to sell out something with these good quarterbacks and these good. It was the same with the Philly game. You had a quarterback that is very, very high class, high style, has many weapons, and you end up giving it up to the back. Because in today's NFL, the quarterback's going to beat you a lot faster than the running back's going to beat you, unless if your last name is Henry. Like, it's just the way it is. There's only one team that can really dominate on the ball, and that's the Baltimore Ravens. And they even have Lamar Jackson, who's also an MVP candidate. So it's I feel like this was a bad game for their defensive line, but all in all, for if you look at that total defensive effort, if you tell me that they gave up what they gave up, 100 yards, 115 yards for Joe Mixon and 2 touchdowns, and then you kept C.J. Stroud under 100. Yeah. Or what's your alternative? C.J. Stroud throws for 350 and 3 touchdowns, and Joe Mixon gets like 50 yards. No, I'll take the running back in the buck 15 all day. I feel like that was their scheme going in. They they were able to contain Stroud. I'm happy with the game plan. I think that you're only going to get better. And Wyatt, once you look at the injury reports coming off of this week, right now Wyatt has practiced this week. It's been limited. He might not come back this week against the Jaguars, but he is going to be back this season. So before the trade deadline, no, I'm not trading for D tackle at this point. I'm trading for somebody else, which we can talk about later at the end of this little podcast there, Kyle. But
I think I know the name of this person, Dave. It might have been from a prior team that he was on at
you know
one
what they say,
point.
Kyle? It comes in threes. He's kind of like Beetlejuice. If I say it in 3 consecutive episodes, then he will come home.
I have tagged him endlessly on social media, telling him to return to Green Bay. So we'll see if that comes through. Me and you could really take some credit in this situation if that happens.
Yeah, I mean, at least we got to show him a little bit of love. I know didn't end up the best at the end. Maybe he feels a little bit jaded on fans. We are pro my boy, which again I'll go that segment's later, just like our Narv Dog segment will be later.
So the next topic, Dave, was something that you led into really well as you were talking, which is the defensive line, or really, the defense in general. I guess my thinking on the defense at this point is the system is working. Like I think the system is working. It's effective. You can tell that the game plan is going well. There's been some additions to the team this week that I think will help that side of the ball as well. Your camera went down, but that's okay. We'll push right through it. But are trades reasonable to tighten up the defense? I think that the November 5th date is the trade deadline. So
And a back.
that's all right. I just pushed right through. Was just saying that November 5th is the trade deadline. So is that reasonable to tighten up the defense with some kind of trade? I think that your answer was no. I just want to make sure that that's still the case.
Yeah, no, for defensive line, no. There's really nothing on defense except for one position that I think that you could really ramp up. You got to get more pressure off the edge. I know that this last game they got a lot of pressure on CJ Stroud, but Rashawn Gary probably had the best game of his whole season. But it still feels like they need more rotation. It still feels like they need something else, and that's where you bring my boy home. And it kind of hurt me. I looked actually I saw an interview this week where Zadarius was talking to I think he was answering questions about if he'd go to Lions, and he's just like, yeah, I would. I'd get to play Green Bay and Minnesota 2 times a year. Like I'd do that in a heartbeat. Zadarius, stop that, please. You're hurting the family. You're basically, it's Thanksgiving dinner, and you're talking about how you're going to dye your hair blue in front of your grandpa. It's like, can we not do this right now? Come home. You're going through a phase. It's okay.
Not a
We're
fan. Um, yeah,
It's my personality.
I think that the Packers are doing a good job of still putting pressure on the quarterback. We, at least in this game, they did a good job of that. We've had some issues with that in games past. This wasn't one of those games. I'm not sure how elite the Texans' offensive line is, but it's elite enough where they're run blocking very well. So I think that they knew coming in that they had to put pressure on CJ Stroud and get him uncomfortable in the pocket. They were able to do that. Like you said, Rashawn Gary, a very good game. I love also the fact that they're able to get McKinney involved. You got a sack in this game. And bring him off of the edge, in really a disguised coverage because you're not thinking if X lines up on the edge that he's coming, right? So, it's kind of nice to see that kind of stuff worked in and that they're comfortable enough now allowing him to try to go in and get to the quarterback rather than just having him back in coverage 100% of the downs the defense plays. So I think that's a great thing to see.
Well, that was Hafley. Hafley had an expert plan. He had a bunch of guys line up at line of scrimmage. You didn't know which four were coming before were coming. It just came from different packages and blitz. It was very Brian Flores of him. He kept on blitzing. He got that pressure. You just didn't know where it was coming from. It was a great strategy, honestly.
Yeah, I think the other team that teams plural in the NFC that you see do that a lot are one, the Minnesota Vikings are very good at that. They actually talked about that in pregame before we played the Vikings at how they're very good, and Harrison Smith is one of the best at disguising coverages in the NFL. And then the 49ers do that as well very well when they're healthy. That team's kind of banged up right now on both sides of the ball, but a very elite defensive group there, and good defensive minds in San Francisco too that are really good at disguising coverages, especially when they know that they're game planning for a good quarterback and good wide receiving group. So I'll just give my piece on the trades real quick. Is it a necessity? To me, no. I think that in classic Packers fashion, we've talked about this a lot as well, that the Packers are a team that traditionally are into building the roster that they have, making it more elite, sticking with guys. We saw that with Narvison. Willing to stick with guys even when they don't have a couple weeks back to back where they're not playing very well. They're still ultimately coming out with wins. The NFL is a hard league to win in. We see that, man, with the spirit of competitiveness, like a game, even the Thursday night game last night, where we're talking about a Rams team who's only won 2 games, but they're facing a one-loss team and kind of took it to Minnesota. So like the competition week to week in the NFL is, anybody can win on any given week, and they always say that, and it's kind of cliche, but it really is the truth. We see the Packers struggle with a couple teams every year that you think to yourself, man, I don't understand why we're in a competitive game with this team. And really, the truth is, at the end of the day, is that teams are still consistently competitive, even if they're not winning, or if they're not a 500 team every single year. The Chicago Bears are a good example of that in the NFC North. Like we have games where it's absolute shootouts with the Bears, but they've been traditionally kind of a less than favorable roster. So definitely kind of an interesting thing there. Do we need the trades? No, I like that Cooper got to get a little playing time in this game. I thought that he did a fantastic job in his positional role. I think that he's going to be great in Green Bay as he continues to get a little bit more size, as he continues to be coached and mentored on, how to play the position well from other guys that are doing it currently. And really, I would like to see the linebacker group be a little bit more elite. Maybe that comes from my AJ Hawk and Clay Matthews days. But, You know, do we need it? I've asked that like 3 times now to myself. I guess I'm in a kind of some kind of internal battle here, but um,
Kyle, I I don't want to interrupt you, but have you ever heard the story of the girl with 3 matches?
no, I have not. Please enlighten me.
So there was this girl. It was the early 1900s, and she was very, very poor. And her mother sent her out in a cold, cold blizzard. And she had these matches, and she said, "Go out and sell these matches, honey." She went from door to door. And she couldn't sell these matches until she got overcome by the cold, and it was just too much. And she lit a match, and then all of a sudden she just started visualizing this great life she could have had. She could have been in a rich family, been next to the fire, it would have been great. And then the match slowly dies, and she gets sad and comes back to the reality that she's in the storm. Still, she trudges on. She has 2 matches now. She can still do this. She can still sell these matches to make her mother happy. So she gets out there, gets rejected again and again and again. And she has to, Kyle. Her fingers are too cold. She lights another match. And then again, she's just sitting there on a paradise. It's just this beach that's just so warm and graceful and great. And her grandmother is there hugging her and loving her. And then she takes the third match and she lights it. And then she's brought home to paradise to live with Jesus, Kyle. And that's what can happen right now with Zadarius Smith. He he went out. He was sent into the cold, Kyle. He went to Minnesota and he lit the match, and it was great. He got sacks. He got to taunt Aaron Rodgers, and then the reality struck in, and he was with a terrible organization. And then he got traded to the Browns, and he struck the other match. And oh my gosh, the Browns could be a playoff team. They made it last year. Joe Flacco's doing Joe Flacco stuff, and then he gets brought back to reality. And now he's with his last match, Kyle. Bring my boy home. Let him strike his match and be in paradise again with the Green Bay Packers. Let him have that peace. I'm tired of this, Kyle. Every week that my boy is not home, I cry. It hurts me, Kyle. I want Zadarius back so bad. I have a Zadarius Smith jersey. I'll wear it next week. I don't care what it takes. I want my boy home. Goody, what are you doing? You see my cries.
Dave Denny, everyone. Dave, applaud yourself. That's a great rant. It is a good take. Um, who told you this terrible story?
It's a real book. Look it up, like The Girl in 3 Matches. It's a real story. I mean, not all of it was like, obviously every time she struck a match it was a different thing. I didn't nail that, but like, yeah, bring my boy home though.
All right. Let's breeze past matches and dying out in the cold and get to some other trade considerations. So typically we don't talk a whole lot about the NFC North unless it's in competition to the Packers. But this relates directly to that, is that there's obviously some teams that we could think about that might need some trade help, adding pieces to the team before the trade deadline. The Lions are the obvious underliner to that situation with Aiden Hutchinson injury. So they could use some edge help. They're definitely not the same defense without him. Every team, well, I shouldn't say every team, but we know the elites of the league. And if those guys were to go down on their respective teams, the TJ Watts of the world, the Max Crosby's of the world, especially Aiden Hutchinson's of the world, right? Like those guys are all in that same category of elite edges. And, so I think the Lions are a good contender. But really the question is, Dave, are other teams in the NFC North considering some kind of trades before this trade deadline? And who, I'm not even asking you to predict who's going to go where or what the movement would be, but what are the teams to you that stand out that would be looking to add some pieces before the trade deadline in the NFC North?
The obvious one to me right now would probably be the Vikings with offensive line depth, just because they just Christian Darrisaw, their left tackle, went down with a season injury or a season-ending injury yesterday versus the Rams. So that's the one that kind of screams out to me. Honestly, the Bears could probably use offensive line help too, though. And then you have the Lions with edge pressure, which, as long as they get anybody but Za'Darius, I'm okay with that. But like, I don't, I
Who are
don't
the
think that.
So with those two teams in mind, do you think there's anybody that really fits that mold that you see like that's kind of uh that's in talks right now, or that might be on the fence of like, hey, this person can easily be moved where they'd be a threatening piece for these teams to obtain?
It's the hard part, especially with offensive line, because in the NFL, you're not trading your offensive linemen. Like it's very, very rare. Like if anything, I'd more like try to, kick the tires on a Bakhtiari before I trade for somebody, or have another team even want to trade, because in a rebuild with a team, the one thing that you want to have is a good offensive line. You can trade away wide receivers, running backs, defensive pieces, but like if you're rebuilding your team completely and say you want to have your rookie quarterback succeed, say like Vikings next year, where they're going to have pretty much a rookie quarterback. Yeah, he's second year, but he hasn't played a down of NFL football. You're not going to trade, anything away or anything for. Like, I just don't know why you would be a rebuilding team that would try to get rid of your offensive line. So it's just hard to say.
Yeah, I think there's two categories when we look at trades in the NFL, right? Then there's the trades that like we talk about even on here with like Devontae Adams, for example, right? Where we know the guy's unhappy. We know that he has issues with the coaching staff or the schemes that are going on there. And it gets talked about for a period of time. And then finally the trade happens and no one's shocked by it. Everybody's just kind of speculating where they might go. Then there's the kind of trades where you don't see them coming at all. And it's quite the sudden onset of a trade where you're like, oh, I didn't even know that, this was going to happen. And, we've all heard Aaron Rodgers say in the past that the NFL it's a business, and it's sometimes it can be a harsh business, and it's not about who's friends with who necessarily. And the franchises that have added pieces based on that kind of thing, the Aaron Rodgers type trades, have not always been successful in the results of getting those players, because it doesn't always work out that team's system is good for this particular player. And I think when you talk about offensive linemen, especially, like that's not a small move for a franchise to replace a left tackle, right? Like this is something that like we're not only going to have to pay this guy a pretty decent amount of money, even if it's just for the rest of the year, or we're picking up a contract or whatever, guaranteed money. But if we already have a player that's set into that position, like what do we do with our guy that's hurt next season? Do we deal that man too now? Now we have to worry about replacing this guy, or getting him in a rotation. Now we have to cut somebody else. How does that all work out? So I think that's a tough piece to add to the team without there being some kind of long-term repercussions. And I think with wide receivers and running backs, when you're just missing a piece, it's very easy to acquire a piece, to kind of add to the team and say, hey, this is just going to straight make us better as a team, not for just a game or two, right? Like this is something that we're going to try to keep this person for, a nice like 3-year, 5-year contract, almost similar to like the Josh Jacobs situation where it's like, hey, like we're dealing Aaron Jones, right? Like, or like we're getting rid of Aaron Jones. So like now we need a piece to this team, like, and you're less of a team without that piece there. And they didn't just acquire him for a year, So like I think that lineman's a hard thing to just say like, yeah, we're going to grab somebody. But it is an interesting take that the Bears and the Vikings might both be in a boat where they're trying to look for some help in that area. I think the Bears are a good one that you pointed out too. Like I think that would be the two that weigh on my mind leaving this conversation. Is that I think, in my personal opinion, I think that the Lions are going to look, to add somebody and shop around just at least a little bit for that edge position. And then, like you're saying, I think the Bears could definitely add some offensive line help without it bouncing back too much, because I don't think their group is too great. If I'm being honest. So, all right. We're doing well with time for all the topics that we had to cover. Look ahead, Dave. We're looking ahead to Packers in Jacksonville, at Jacksonville this week. I had the privilege on my way back from a trip recently to watch Jacksonville play New England overseas, and it was a really cool game. First of all, like the environment was really cool to see. Them play in Wembley, which was like pretty hyped. Like there's a ton of people there. There's a good crowd, and it's always kind of cool to see like the neutral crowds too, because they're not really necessarily cheering for one team or the other. They're just cheering for everything. So it makes
Oh,
it
yeah.
makes it a good environment. I love that they're doing some of the overseas stuff, just not Brazil, because apparently they flood their fields before the Packers play on them. But nonetheless, um, Jacksonville played a pretty good game. Brian Thomas Jr. is on fire right now for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Amazing rookie. Honestly, probably the best first round wide receiver so far this year.
Yeah,
And that's above Marvin Harrison Jr. That's above Malik Neighbors. He's balling out.
yeah. Neighbors had a good season. He just had an injury, so I think he's kind of plagued by that a little bit. But certainly one of the best rookies in the class out of LSU, I believe. Correct.
Both of LSU, Neighbors and Brian Thompson Jr.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I think that their receiving threats are definitely credible. Are they as good as the Texans? Like in terms of if Nico Collins was healthy? Maybe. I think it's similar. I think that if I'm comparing the two things, and you can kind of contrast me on the take, but um, I think your Christian Kirk is more of your Tank Dell type situation, and I think that your Nico Collins is definitely Brian Thomas right now, because he's just on fire, and him and Trevor Lawrence are finding a groove. And then you have some good running back play that's going on there too, even in spite of Etienne being hurt. So I think that
Oh, Auburn boy, Tank Bisbee.
yeah, Tank played a really good game too. I think he had a couple touchdowns in that game. And the Patriots aren't an elite squad right now. They're kind of trying to figure out their own stuff. But the Patriots played them well. They went down, and at least initially played them pretty well. Went down the field and scored. It was like 10-0, I think, in that game at one point, and then Jacksonville just came storming back, and they were too much for them over time. But definitely looks like Jacksonville's passing game is more in a rhythm. So that's something to kind of be looking at as we go ahead to this game. Is, hey, they're also a group that could hurt us in both areas if we allow it. I think that the Packers match up well with them on both sides of the ball, because I don't think that Jacksonville's defensive group is elite, in my opinion. I think they're very similar to what the Texans offered on defense. I think the Packers should expect pressure. They should expect there to be a good home environment for Jacksonville, with them building just a little bit of steam. And I absolutely think that they can be successful throwing the football still, even despite that, happening. So I think that we match up well against them. We can make predictions in a minute, but do you feel like the Packers match up well against the Jaguars? This is certainly a game that I think that we should win. Um,
Uh, I'll actually start this out with the question. So, me, I grew up a good Christian boy, grew up in the Midwest, Wisconsin, and Pentecostal. Didn't really know much about the streets or anything, Kyle. You might know a little bit more about me. A house that sells drugs. What's that called? Like, there's just that corner house where just drugs are sold in them. It's something that starts. I don't. What's it called? It starts with a T, I believe.
yes, Dave. They refer to that as a trap house.
Oh, okay, yeah. And then there was a philosopher that I actually read about, and the great, I believe her name is Nicki Minaj, where she said, "I bees in the trap. I bees in the trap." Kyle, I believe the Green Bay Packers bees in the trap this week. I think this could potentially be a trap game. I think that Jacksonville has a really, really good offense, and maybe we're feeling ourselves after that big win. There's a lot of things that could happen. They play the Lions next week, I believe, or is it a bye week next week? It's either the Lions or a bye. But so I feel like I don't think Green Bay is overlooking them. I don't think in modern NFL you really have a team anymore that's going to not play week to week. Inside the locker room, it's not a narrative. But for us to talk about, we bees in the trap, Kyle. This is if there was a trap game, this is this week. They have the score on offense. Will they? Maybe not. Probably not. But could they? Oh yeah, totally. You know, so I think this could be a dangerous game. I'm going to, unfortunately, I won't be able to watch it live. I'm going to be working, so I might have to record it depending on what's going on. But yeah, no, I think this game could be very, very dangerous for Green Bay. You have Tank Bigsby, who's a great receiving back. He's going to get his. You're going to have Brian Thompson Jr., where, yeah, he has been shut down in weeks, but he's also just destroyed the league coming in, too. So there's a lot of potential. And then I'm not even talking about Evan Ingram, their tight end. I'm not even talking about like their other wide receiver, Christian Kirk. So you have so many options on that team. They shouldn't be 2-5. But luckily for us, their defense is literal garbage. Their defense has been terrible. I can't name one player on their defense. Their offense I can name many. Their defense is trash. Oh, Ronald Darby. Ronald Darby is who I can name, and he is garbage this year.
So let me interject for a second and say, and this is common knowledge if you watch enough football, is that even bad offensive play makes an average to less than average defense look good. And so if the Packers are on par with their offensive play, they continue to stick to their game plan. They continue to push the ball downfield in the passing game. They continue to get Jacobs involved, which we should have talked about Jacobs' first touchdown reception in the Texans game ever, career, Dave.
First ever, and it happened to be Jordan Love's 50th touchdown pass too. Pretty
So,
cool moment.
yeah, cool moment for both guys. And it looked like they actually tried to throw to Jacobs a screen on the previous play. It didn't work. They went right back to it and got him his touchdown. So I like that out of the coaching staff. It showed that they're looking out for their boy, trying to get him in the end zone. I like Jacobs a lot, man. I liked him when he was in Las Vegas, and I certainly like that he's on the Packers now. Still,
Yeah. If he gets like 8 more touchdown catches, then he'll match how many kids he has.
I mean, I still think about pretty often if we retained Jones somehow on this whole thing and kept them both. I mean, what a crazy running back group that would be. But that's
been too good, Kyle. You can't have it that nice.
The conversation for another time and brings into question things that I don't get paid for, Dave. I don't get paid to make those decisions. And if I
just do a Marvel, we just do a Marvel What If series with Green Bay Packers.
Hey, man, it could happen. I mean, we had opportunities to snag a lot of people in the drafts that in the previous drafts that are really elite players now. We could have had T.J. Watt. So
write that down. I think we got something there.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good maybe an off season thing that we could cover, to be honest. But that's more for off camera conversations. But all right, yeah. So we'll do predictions for the Jacksonville game at the end because there's one addition actually, Dave, that does matter this week for the Green Bay Packers, and a little bit of a stinger too for the Jets at the same time, which is that you got the news before I did about this, which is interesting. I don't know how much stuff you keep up on during the week. I usually am on social media, a fair amount during the week as far as the Packers are concerned. But I saw that initially Robert Saleh had come to the Green Bay's practice, and I thought to myself, man, are they thinking about bringing him on? And in what capacity are they going to bring him on if they do? And we saw that kind of develop I saw that kind of develop. I'm texting you. We're going back and forth about it. And you say you say that they hired him.
Which I didn't think was going to happen at all. I just saw it, and it was like him in a flexible role. Wow.
So it's kind of a surprise move by the Packers. Not surprising in terms of his relationship with both Hafley and LaFleur. We both know he's coached with both, very close with both guys. It does make sense in terms of professional and working relationships to bring him in. I don't think that. I think that unless you have a different take on this, Dave, that I'm gonna switch my opinion on. I don't think that Saleh was the problem in New York. Um, I don't think that he's. I think that he's just the one that everybody points fingers at and says, "Yeah, he's got to go" when things are going wrong. Um, kind of like a McCarthy situation in Green Bay. And I have my issues with McCarthy. They're not the same thing, but certainly the Jets feel like they have a winning organization there. They're just not winning games. So, and we're not here to discuss the New York Jets, but we are here to discuss Robert Saleh right now. And I think the addition is great. I like him on the team, and I like that. To be honest, as a Packers fan, I thoroughly enjoy the addition of Robert Saleh because I feel like the Jets have acquired so many of Green Bay's pieces and are expecting to win games and like have pointed the fingers back at Green Bay and said, well, they're the problem. And we've just kind of had to watch that unfold and be like, yeah, like best of luck to him there. And we've just kind of taken those blows. But this week, Dave, we
Feels
got,
good to get one back.
we got one back. We got one back. We were getting jumped, Dave. We were getting jumped by Alan Lazard and Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. And now I don't feel like we're getting jumped anymore. I feel like we've acquired the leg, we've swept it, Dave, and now we're looking down on the Jets organization. We're saying, "Ha ha, got you last."
It's one of those things where honestly, and I know, well, honestly, we'll probably talk about Aaron Rodgers at least once every single podcast for the rest of this season, at least, just because he played in Green Bay for almost 20 years. So I feel like a bitter ex. I'll admit it. I feel like last year watching Hard Knocks, it was terrible. It was like I was stalking Aaron Rodgers' Facebook, just seeing him posing at, this or that. And he's smiling and he's just like
Yeah,
hanging out on the beach with my new men. It's just like, no, this you were with me. Why weren't you happy with me, Aaron?
yeah. Aaron was doing the look back at himself, and he was like, "New pants," like that whole thing.
It's like, Aaron, I wanted to give you the world and you rejected it. And now what do they have that I don't? And now you look back and it's just like, now it's starting to fall apart a little bit. Now all of a sudden the Jets, their car got repoed and now he can't pay rent this month and now she's gotta have him there still. And, it kind of feels nice to have some type of kickback where it's just like, okay, I did the right thing. I stayed true to who I was, and it's working out for me. Right now, my team is 5-2. Their team is 2-5. I feel like Saleh, honestly, I feel like he's a very, very good coach. Maybe not the best head coach. I feel like there were a lot of decisions that he made that probably weren't the best during his tenure. But as a defensive mind, amazing.
Dave,
When you look at his
I
record,
watched Hard Knocks when it was the Jets, mostly for Aaron Rodgers, just to watch him go to another organization, watch him in different colors, and um, you know, it, there's fun in that as a football fan to see a guy that you knew and loved go to another organization and and be curious about how they play, especially like we talked about last week, where it's a situation that they go into another place and you get to watch them play football every single week and kind of be on the fence as to how they perform. But Saleh was one of those guys in Hard Knocks that you look and he gains your attention right away because of his attitude towards the game and how he treats players and the relationships that he has with them. We've seen guys go to other organizations and be super successful. And this isn't a head coaching role. This isn't a fluid role for the Green Bay Packers. He's a great defensive mind, like you said, was once in San Francisco where he was successful. So I think that it's absolutely a huge addition for the Packers. And it might not seem like it for some people. It might just seem like, well, they brought him on, but what is he really doing? And like, even if he doesn't do a thing, but he's just a presence, he's just another threat. He's just something for people to think about. Like, we might have to approach this a little bit differently considering Salah's weighing in on things. Like, I am 110% in on that. He's also seen how some of these AFC teams perform, which could be huge for the Packers because some of these games, like we've talked about, Dave, in the NFC are going to be tough games. And we're going to have to play some teams in the AFC in this year that, like these games, right, where you're saying this could be a trap game. Now, if I have Saleh and I played this team twice a year, like I might have a completely different take on how I approach it. And if we're all in unison as a coaching staff between LaFleur and Halfley and Saleh and everybody else that's helping out on both sides of the ball, I think that's a pretty successful Green Bay team with the talent that they have. So I really like the fact that, like that Green Bay has brought him on. They didn't just let him sit in this universe out in the world and not, get in touch with him, see what he's doing, see what his plans are, if he's willing to come to Green Bay and help out. And, I think it's an absolutely great addition for the Green Bay Packers. I could not be more excited to have him here. It definitely feels good because it's kind of a swing at New York, but it feels even better knowing that the Packers are going to get some extra help and that this is a team that really is adding pieces again, Dave, that are going to help us win games. That's what it's about ultimately. Is
One more point too that I can bring up. I'm pretty sure a Matt LaFleur offense versus the Robert Saleh defense. Robert Saleh, I think, is like either 4-2 or 5-1 against Matt LaFleur in those games. So if anybody knows how to beat Matt LaFleur, it's Robert Saleh. So him giving those points and seeing how he would exploit your offense, I love it. I wanna have him as a consultant. If say if he wants to get more of a role later on with the Green Bay Packers, great. And on top of that, Kyle, if this is a dream case scenario, Green Bay Packers win the Super Bowl, and Aaron Rodgers has to sit and watch a parade where Robert Saleh is holding up the Lombardi Trophy, passing it around, wearing a Green Bay Packers shirt.
he's wearing an Aaron Rodgers jersey, Dave.
That'd be the ultimate troll. I love it. I'm here for it. I'm petty. Might as well call me Tom because I am a heartbreaker and I am for it.
I want to see LaFleur. I want to see LaFleur in the Rodgers jersey. I want to see Halfley in the Lazard jersey. I want to see Saleh in the Adams jersey because it was the time he got fired that Devontae came in. I want to see it. I need to see it. And I also need to see a Packers Jets opener game next year in some neutral site. I need to see it. Find the halfway point between New York and Green Bay. Let's meet them there. Let's go at it. It's only right, Dave, that we have these two teams meet. I know they're not meeting this year unless they go all the way.
Meet me in Cleveland by the bay. Okay. Just have it in Lambeau.
I'm telling you, we show up, they show up, and we just have it out, man.
Yeah,
and then
no,
we hug
again,
it out.
let's just do this in Lambeau Field, Kyle. That's an option. It doesn't have to be on a neutral site.
Yeah, but I don't want there to be like mixed things going on. Like I don't want Aaron to get booed at Lambeau still. Like does he deserve it? Yeah, but like, do I want to see that happen? No. Like I want to see the two teams play in a competitive location. I wouldn't mind if it was just in some location, like even like an England type situation or Germany type situation where they give like the fans just an opportunity to actually maybe there's a take on that says that we do have the right as fans to have that be in the States just because there's a lot of contention there between the two sides. But
I feel like Favre went back to Lambeau. And Rodgers has to go back to Lambeau at some point. That's just got to be in the cards. And I hate to say
I'm
that,
telling you,
yes, he will get booed. It won't be positive.
the first game of the year is usually like a Super Bowl rematch, or it's like some kind of game that weighs heavily on the hearts of football fans everywhere. And what game is more enticing than a Jets versus Packers game? I cannot make one.
No.
I cannot make a comparison as to what game would draw more attention for an opening game than Jets versus Packers to start the year next year.
That would be crazy next year. I would love it. One of them has to win a Super Bowl, though, and I hope it's the Green Bay Packers.
Well, I can tell you it's not looking good for the Jets this year, Dave. They just lost to Russell Wilson, Mr. Unlimited, as they call him.
Let's go for 7. Steeler Nation. Let's get number 7.
Have you ever seen that interview of him, Dave, where he's talking about it's like the most like subtly conceited interview that he's ever done, but Russell Wilson is and he's a Wisconsin was a Wisconsin quarterback at one point, so like I'm not gonna hate on him too much, but he seems like a halfway decent dude, but a little arrogant at times because in this one interview he's talking about how he's like talking to some reporter and he's like I just whatever work is asked of me, I take the work and I double it. He's like, that's just always the kind of guy I've been. I'm like, everything, Russell? You double everything? He comes home and his wife's made him a single box of mac and cheese, and he's like, negative. I'll double it. He just
Kyle,
everything in his life
we're
he
talking
has to double.
we're talking about the man that played in London and was doing high knees in the middle of the walkway. I don't put anything against this psychopath. I'm pretty sure he has bodies hidden in his basement. Sierra's just too afraid to say anything.
When you were a yard away from winning the Super Bowl and you throw an interception, I think that you do lose some screws up top. It probably bothers you
That was
quite a.
that was his villain origin story.
Yeah, the Pete Carroll villain origin story as well. I don't understand how Marshawn Lynch doesn't just punch Pete Carroll in the face every time that he sees him, but it should just be a fight for those two. But we're getting off track. All right, predictions for Packers and Jacksonville. This is your bees in the trap game, Dave. Call the score. I'm writing it down. What do you got?
We do bees in the trap. We do bees in the trap. I still have faith in Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. I think that they win pretty decisively. I think that it ends up being like 14 to like 38. I do think this could be a trap game though. This is one of those where I'm gonna make this prediction and then I'll look back and I'll probably feel terrible about it depending on what happens. But I I do think they win decisively. They're just a better team. They're a better team than Jacksonville Jaguars, unless if they get cursed by the Florida curse, which they shouldn't because it's still pretty early in the season. It's not like we're going there down in December where it should be this giant shock.
Dave, what was the final score of the Packers Texans game? Do you know?
Wasn't it 20 to 24 or 20? No, it was 23 to 24.
I think that's.
I think it was 23 24.
That sounds right. Well, we'll have to make sure. Obviously, we were both wrong again. You had them separated, I think, by. I think you had 33-17 for the Packers last week. I had 31-20.
We're never going to get one right, Kyle.
We're going to be close. We're going to be close. I had them separated by 11 still, and it was much tighter than that. Man, I'm struggling with this one. I feel like the Jaguars are coming off of a really good game for the most part. Like I said, I feel like we match up well against them, which is half the battle in these NFL games is can we match up well and limit big plays. I always talk about that. It's one of the truest things in NFL football is can you like prevent big chunk plays. The environment matters. It's in Jacksonville. It's going to play an effect on how the Packers play to some extent. It always does. It's not Lambeau, but it is a different playing environment. I think this is a 28-24 Packers victory.
Ooh, that bees in the trap there, Kyle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And to end this, Dave, we have to. I didn't have this on our list tonight, but we have to cover this at least for a minute or two.
Nardog, I miss you, and I'm so sorry. God, Kyle,
It's an extended round of applause, Dave, and it's an extended round of applause because the Packers organization clearly did what was needed to be done in this situation. McManus comes in. Dave, he was good from 65 yards before the game started. 65, Dave.
that wasn't in the game though. It wasn't in the game. No,
Narv Dog would have put it on the 10-yard line from 65.
Kyle, no. The thing is like you're trying to make it seem like I have a cool new stepdad coming in. No, I don't like Brandon. No, Brandon, I don't want to see you kick a 65-yarder for practicing. No. Oh,
Well, we
what's
have
that? Brandon has a past. Maybe we shouldn't let mom around him.
I am going to contradict that immediately. That was so good to see the ball end over end. He kicked that on a bad snap too, by the way. He drilled the first field goal, then they obviously took the timeout and still let him kick it. So it is what it is. But he got his practice swing in, and then he absolutely drills the second one too. Not dead center, but definitely good from a few feet still. You love to see that in his first game. I love to see him celebrating in the end zone, doing the Lambeau leap and stuff with the team guys patting him on the head. They didn't just let him celebrate solo or with the long
What they
snapper.
need to do though is if he does do another Lambeau leap, they need to put oven mitts on his hands, just like neon yellow oven mitts, just to make sure that we can verify with cameras where his hands are going.
You leave my boy alone, Dave. That
Braden,
man
I miss you.
came into Green Bay on what was it, Wednesday? I think that he actually got to the team. So he came in on 4 days essentially. Comes in and kicks a giant game-winning field goal for the Packers over a really good Texans team that I thought that we might have a shot at losing had we not been so efficient in 2 minutes. So, obviously, Narv Dog, miss you. All right, but
now
good to
we
have a kicker
now we got
for you.
Brandon two touch, so much better.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how this all pans out, but so far so good for Mr. McManus there. So seems like
Hands
it's
aren't
going to
the
be a good.
problem, Kyle. It's planes.
Hey, his feet are solid. That's all I care about. All right.
I care about
So
his hands.
all right, we're gonna wrap this one up for the night, man. But as always, man, appreciate you being here. I'm sorry you had some camera issues tonight, but we got through it. I just ran my mouth longer every time the camera went down,
Yeah, I don't know.
so we're good.
We'll have to figure it out. But yeah, bring my boy home, Kyle. Bring him home.
All right, man. Until next week.
Catch you later, buddy.